Or a Kramer that you're doing.
Are you playing music?
Oh God, yes.
I can't hear it. I can't hear anything.
I heard it.
Not me.
Good.
How come I heard it?
I don't know. Aaron never hears the music. It's
once.
Bizarre.
I have not heard one piece of music that's been played on any show.
It's bizarre.
Weird.
We play some good music. Anyway, welcome to episode 4 of the Seinfeld Chronicles, a No Holds Barred video special project Aaron and I are doing. And tonight joining us, very exciting times, is our good friend, Mr. Steve Bennett of the Sportscasters podcast. Steve, how you doing, bud?
Good. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Love
man.
Seinfeld. Big Seinfeld guy.
Well, you're in the right spot because that's what we're talking about tonight.
I'm at the end of my rope with this fucking show. Like, it's enough.
I will say, Aaron, though, I've been excited about your Cheers watching because I'm a huge Cheers fan as well.
How good! I can't believe how well it holds up. Like, it holds up way better than I would have ever imagined.
Cheers is one of those shows that I'm never not watching. Like, I have like 5 shows that I'm always watching it. Like, on any given day, I might watch The Sopranos. I might watch The Wire. I might watch Seinfeld. I might watch Cheers. You know, it's in that category for me.
Right.
I'm always watching those shows one way or another. You know, whether I'm seriously watching them chronologically or just checking in and going into those worlds because I want to be in those worlds from time to time.
Yeah, I don't want to think about the Cheers world too much because, like, then it starts to get sad, you know. But like, but I know what you mean. Like, and I feel it's kind of like it doesn't get mentioned a lot as like the greatest sitcoms anymore. Like, it's almost like
it used to be. It definitely always was mentioned, but lately, you don't hear it as much on the list anymore. But forever, it was always like on the top of every list.
And it is by the Seppenwalds and the Feinbergs and the people that know that thing. The problem is as we get older, the generation after us and even the one after that, and I'm trying to fight this with my daughter, they don't know about anything that didn't happen 5 minutes ago. And part of the reason is because of their choices, right? Think about when we were kids.
Right.
I would be at my dad's house on a Saturday. We had like 7 channels. I had to watch Mama's Family or Star Trek or Sanford and Son or whatever was on from my dad's generation because my choices were limited. Whereas like with my daughter, she's like, why would I go back and watch that? I have a million choices.
Well, and that's like if you think of the age of that now too, that's like you're mentioning stuff in the 80s that was only from like the late 60s. I mean, Cheers, like early Cheers now is what, 30 years old? 40 years old, right? So,
40,
so you're talking something shit from the 1940s, like when we were kids.
I watched movies about the war. I knew about the war and about the horrific
and that's
the French and Indian War.
And that's how far you had to go back for it to feel old, right? Like when we were kids, you had to go back at least to then.
Yeah.
For it to feel old. Nothing from the 70s or 80s felt old. It just felt older than what we were watching. But now anything not in HD feels really old, right?
So
like
you think
even
HD's
sports
been cut
highlights.
Off? You think HD is like that makes sense. Because I was thinking about that, like because for us, what looked old was black and white. Right?
Yeah,
like
and I think it's HD now. If it's not in HD, their eyes glaze over. You know what I mean? It's like I don't even see that. I can't even see it, you know.
Well, like to them, like The Office would be like
old
to us, like the stuff from like Andy Griffith and all that, right? So like you know, and I think that's
like
almost
Stanford
the style is more relatable, right? So like if I have The Office on, I'll notice my daughter will stop and kind of watch it a little bit more than like if I were to have something from the or even like Family Guy, like she's been kind of like poking on that a little bit and stuff. So I think that's just the era. I think it's more like probably mid to late 2000s. That's kind of like what our 70s and 80s were, you know, or in the 80s, I should say.
My son will watch. My oldest is like he really likes Arrested Development, and he loves The Office. And he's 10. So like I have to fast forward some parts, right?
Some things I know, but
but but Seinfeld he has a harder time with, and it's weird because he really likes physical comedy. So it's like there's something like Kramer in how it looks because Kramer is just that excellent, right? So,
and the other part of that is the language too, right? Like it's another thing I fight. Like as we get and this is even a political take, as we get woker as a society, for lack of a better word, they don't hear it. It doesn't sound right. It's not how they speak. It's not how they hear the world. I think that's another part of it besides just the picture, is that the words, the things they're saying, and not even necessarily the PC stuff, but just in general, how language communication has worked. It doesn't totally translate to them. But
and it's interesting too that I find showing them old stuff, I really have to like look at cutoff points. And you know what's a great show for that is The Simpsons. Like I can show them season 1 to 10 of The Simpsons without any worry because everything is innuendo, right?
Right.
But if I step past like season 15, it's like blatant sexual stuff. And that's another interesting thing in that is that like, oh, okay, like the writing obviously the writing got worse. We can all probably imagine that, but it got dumber. Like it got less like about, it's almost like the limitations of what they were not allowed to say back then forced them to get creative with it. So they did a bunch of fun stuff. Whereas now it's just plain sex jokes, right?
Well, I think some of it too is like trying to keep up with like Family Guy or whatever. You know what I mean? Like because Family Guy came around and they could be more in your face. And I think Simpsons that's around season 15, right? It's probably like 3 seasons into Family Guy or whatever. When I think they felt like maybe they needed to keep up a little bit with like kind of getting a little edgier and Family Guy was a juggernaut those first like 5 or 6 seasons. I mean, it was just massive in the culture everywhere. And I think even for me, like that became more. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The DVDs.
Yeah. It resurrected the show really. Yeah. But I think that too, that like the show for me that was 2.5 Men. That's when I kind of noticed the language changing on TV. I remember my grandpa coming up to me and saying like, "Oh, you see this show with the men, the 3 men, 2, 4, I don't know. They talk and it's so nasty." And I said, "Oh, okay. No, I didn't." And I'm like, "Wow, he's actually right." Because usually I just figure he's not, but he was right. And that's kind of a changing point to me. I don't remember what year that 2004, 5, somewhere around there. I
it's
feel
around
like
there.
The language changed a little bit.
My dad loved 2.5 Men, and I hate 2.5 Men. But every week, without fail, he'd be like, "Did you see 2.5 Men last night?" And I'd be like, "No, I don't watch it." And then later
I think it shocked them. Yeah. That generation. I think it was the shock value of it. They were like,
well, because it was on CBS, which is like the old people channel. Like, where so all of a sudden this is like, this edgier show. But
we're going from like Everybody Loves Raymond to that, right?
Yeah, King of Queens.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's dive back into our Seinfeld chronological watch here. We are in season 1, episode 4, Male Unbonding, aired June 14th, 1990. In our last episode, I think we started to feel a little bit more like we're kind of getting there, right? The group is all together. Elaine's kind of with them. But you saw some weird stuff. Like George is successful, which, we weren't, that won't last for a while, but he seems like he's actually the most together of the group. Jerry seems a little more like, I don't know what to call him, struggling. Like he's obviously doing okay to have the apartment and all that he has, but he seems a little bit more like not where they would present him later.
This is the first one they produced after the pilot. They aired out of order, but this is actually the first one they shot with like Elaine. It's the first one that they made after the pilot. The other thing is June 14th, 1990. You guys mentioned on the last show, the Pistons have now won the NBA title on this day, and it's one of the biggest sports riots in the history of the United States and Canada. I think it was 8 or 9 people died on this day in Detroit celebrating, I guess, their win
that just
over
Bill Lambier killing people.
Yeah, it was they went from the court right to the streets, 8 or 9? And they just that team, the Bad Boys, right, the Bad Boy Pistons, and they went and killed 8 humans on the streets of Detroit after the game. But that was this night. So
that's how Rodman had to get that fur for his jackets.
The other thing I checked in terms of like historical context was around this time, but really not until 91. Jerry would go on the Howard Stern show on the mornings that the new shows would air. Because around this time, Howard had about 9 to 11 million viewers or listeners in New York and about 15 million countrywide on all his affiliates. And Jerry really leveraged the power of the Howard Stern show in the early run of Seinfeld. And Howard would always say, as soon as this show's a hit, you're going to ditch me. And he did. And didn't come back on until like 2011 or something. But I looked to see if he was on before this episode, but it seems like it's around 91 in February when he starts to do that. But
somebody's got to do something. That's where he wants.
Yeah, and that was the show was very powerful then. In a state like New York, we had a Republican governor elected in 1994. How did that happen? A big reason was Howard Stern and the Howard Stern Show, which is another discussion. But just to kind of prove the power of the show, like if you know anything about New York and how New York votes, it's wild. And Jerry leveraged that brilliantly to help his show. I thought maybe now, but it's really not until next year.
Right. Well, it's interesting because I mean that'll be the growth period for sure when that ends up moving nights and becoming the anchor. That it becomes. I mean, even this right now gets like a 13.6 rating, which is like pretty solid.
They'd kill for that now, for that now. It'd be the biggest show on TV, probably.
Actually, this says it was 19 million viewers. So they're, they dipped after the stakeout, which was the return episode, after the year off, and they've come down, but not by that much. Like this is 19.1, so like last week is 19.7, and the next one they're actually up for the finale. So,
So bad. Just like because I was just looking quickly here, like the last gubernatorial New York race, the Democrat won by 300,000 votes. Is that a big margin?
This is the best the Republicans done since 94.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Lee Zeldin. And a big reason that the Congress flipped to Republican is because of New York and how well Zeldin did. He pulled about 3 or 4 seats with him. He didn't quite get there gubernatorially, mostly because of Brooklyn. When you have a city like New York City that has Brooklyn, which is as big as Philadelphia, and that's only 1/5 of the city, tough to win statewide, but Zeldin did amazing for Republicans if you're into that kind of thing like I am. But it just goes to show, I guess the original point was just the power of the Stern Show and how Jerry used that for his show and to leverage it really successfully and smartly. And then shit on Howard because Howard always hated the show and always said it sucked. And it was kind of I don't know if a shtick on his part to make that segment more interesting. But when it got popular, Jerry was done until he came on in about 11 or 12.
Trying to get those B movie residuals.
Yeah. Hollywood. Well, there was Hollywood Howie then. So
you gotta see the bees.
Talk to him.
You gotta see the hives.
All right, let's start this up. We're all queued up at zeros. We're on I'm on Netflix. I'm not sure if everyone else is on Netflix. But...
I'm on Netflix, and this is Rick Rude.
There we go. So I like it. Okay. All right, I'm gonna count us in, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, play. Still with the full-on comedy, I think, throughout the episode. Again, we've talked about this a little bit, Steve, in our first few. How much they lean on the stand-up in the episode to help drive the story versus just kind of an open and closed like it would eventually become.
Well, and especially what he's saying here isn't particularly great stand-up either. Like, I mean, Seinfeld's great in general, but like he's this whole bit about how men like to watch other men work. Like, not horrible or anything, but
this is the best bit of the comedy on this episode. I think this first one is the best one.
Yeah, but it's still weak, like comparatively. I think
I read they did record this twice. Once like in a subway setting because they were going to show comedians move around and do sets in different spots, but then they ditched that and re-recorded it, and they're just going to stick with the bar scene instead.
Right, the same club.
Yeah,
better choice. I think the other one would have been confusing.
Right.
Yeah. You forget how long these comedy skits were too back then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're like a minute and like
he's going on and on.
It really was the basis of the episodes. I mean, it was driven by the stand-up. It'll be interesting to see when that starts to fade.
But there's nothing in this episode about watching other men work, is there?
I don't know.
I don't think because usually
not really. Yeah.
Usually the comedy relates to what they're talking about.
Maybe
right?
this the male bonding aspect of it, like guys hanging out.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, or to Steve's point, like this was aired out of order and shit. So maybe they had recorded
maybe the
that.
Comedy didn't match.
Yeah, they had nothing to do with it.
Okay, so George is all upset because he told a woman that he liked her. Is that a faux pas saying that you like somebody?
Love his fanny pack.
The fanny pack is great.
But there's a lot going on here. Number one, the fanny pack. Number two, George is talking about having been at the theater.
Yeah, he's like, I'm telling you, it feels like this George was modeled off like the Pretty Woman character or something. Like early on, like he's way more upper class, like he's upper middle class. Yeah, he's
cultured.
You know.
I wonder if they were trying to jump on the Cheers thing a little bit, in that they're playing with the idea of people of different classes hanging out and being friends.
Right. Could be. Maybe he's more like a Frasier.
Yep.
Yeah, and then it stops because they realize that he's more effective as an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we've seen it in the first few where it seems like he's the problem solver. He's kind of the mensch for Jerry, right? Like Jerry comes to him more with his problems, whereas in the future, it's a little more balanced or a little bit more.
Yeah.
Jerry's like the main.
With the turning point. The turning point being when he accidentally quits his job, wants to go back like nothing happened.
Right.
And they're sitting in Jerry's apartment. What do I do now? Well, I'm going to call in the games. Maybe I'll be a sportscaster. That was kind of the turning point for him.
Right.
It's when he starts to get fat too. Like I think early on he's like kind of still a little thinner, and it was interesting there too. We got to see the whole hall. Like they came all the way up the elevator, out of the elevator, all the way down the hallway.
Apartment number 411.
Even though it doesn't match, like have you seen the diagrams out there online too? But you could tell here, like the way the hallway came and the way they walked in does not match the shape of this apartment and the way it comes out.
We should get Larry David on the phone and give him a stern talking to about that. I love that Kramer's just in his house on the phone.
Just hangs out.
But the door was still locked. Like he locked it anyway on his way in.
Well, he doesn't want to get robbed.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
We've already seen that happen. You don't want to make that mistake twice.
So the couch is like turned a little bit different too. Like I can't wait to see when the apartment just becomes the apartment. Like every episode, I felt like it's been a little bit different. The floor we talked about in the last one. The floor looked off, and I'm really curious as to when it settles in.
I hate Jerry's whininess about not wanting to talk on the phone.
Yeah,
it's so come on. Like he hasn't figured out how to not be detestable yet, like with the upset emotion.
Yeah, I feel like they wanted to make him a whiner, like and make it like, well, that's why his stand-up is great and he's so observational, is because everything annoys him, and he complains about everything, and that leads to his observations about life being quirky and weird.
But he's not whiny as a comedian though.
No, I know.
Like like if he talked the way he talks in his act, then I find it would be a lot more palatable.
I just noticed Yankee jacket hanging, Mets hat in the other corner.
Yeah, he's all over
both sides of the fence there. Yeah,
all through the series, he kind of is. Like he's presented more as a Yankee fan later.
And San Francisco Giant hats back there in the background. So all New York baseball teams, right? Was that
interesting? And it's way more sportsy. Later, he becomes a little bit more like casual dresser versus like here he's very much like a child a lot of the time. He's got like more of the sports stuff on, and like the big like the hat almost looks too big on his head half the time, and the bomber jackets and like stuff like that. Like he's presented more not as a child, but more as probably what a comedian in the 80s looked like, right? Just kind of not someone who dressed up. Whereas later he dresses more like a entertainer or like Hollywood somebody, right? Like in the later seasons, he's always kind of dressed up more.
This is the first Kramerica Industries, right? That we just got.
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, this is like this might be the first like good like problem, like natural human problem that like they're touching on with this one. Like, how do you break up with a person you've been friends with? Like a guy, how do two guys break up that have been friends forever that just don't click anymore? Like, how does that happen? This feels like the first kind of everyday thing that you would deal with, but you wouldn't think of like a sitcom touching on. Just like, hey, as a guy, he's just sick of this dude as a friend, but he doesn't know how to do it because he doesn't want to hurt his feelings. And it's just that's a common thing.
And they do a great job too of like talking about the ping pong table being their unifier.
Yeah.
But like he's 100% correct. That's all it took was like that one little thing that's like someone would have, and you'd become friends with them.
The kid who had the Nintendo first, or whatever.
Yeah. The French
or as wrestling fans.
I hated.
I mean, as wrestling fans, we know it, right? Because I mean, I have friends
who had the pay-per-views.
Yeah, well, I had friends who were younger. That there's only 2 wrestling fans in school, so it was like that was your friend, and now we're your friends for life. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, how do you? Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough scenario. Oh God,
the world hates us and thinks we're dumb.
Is this our first modern monks? I think it is, right?
Yeah, but we never get this weird camera angle they're giving here. Like it's always like there's never that moving shot the way they just did.
Well, this makes it feel too like there's other booths to the right of them, like where we are. Whereas in the future, that seems like a hard wall.
Yeah. Now,
agreed. Yeah.
How long did it take both of you to hate Joel?
Not long.
No, pretty quickly.
Already, right?
At first I was kind of feeling like Jerry was being a dick. Then you get to know Joel and you're like, all right, I get it.
But like this guy is like so abrasive.
As soon as he starts talking to the waitress like that, I'm out. My mom was a waitress, my whole life. I grew up on tips. Like as soon as he starts treating her like that, I'm kind of out on the guy,
Right.
These outfits are atrocious though. Like this woman, the way they have them dressed. I mean, is this like supposed to be like a prairie cafe or something? Like she looks like a school marm with this
I feel like she's
really
waiting
little
for her
dress.
Waiting for like her World War II husband to come home. Like that's what they'd be wearing.
Awful.
That frill around the neck.
Joel's awful, but Kevin Dunn, not the shitty Kevin Dunn, the good Kevin Dunn, the actor here is great.
He's great at it. Yeah.
And he's in Veep later.
Veep, later on
Veep fans. He's awesome in Veep. Right. Yeah, he's so good in Veep.
It's they didn't give him, they just wanted this character clearly to be the broad asshole.
Yeah.
And what happened here is he auditioned for George, didn't get it, and they said, hey, we got this for you, kind of a thing too. So he was in the running for George. Yeah.
That would have been
This is blasphemous.
Yeah.
I don't know though. I think he's pretty good. I think he's a good actor. I actually think he wouldn't have been Jason Alexander. No one ever would be. But if you had a list of guys from this era that maybe could have done it okay, I think he would have been okay actually. Because on Veep, he plays exasperated so well. Like he plays the exasperated, douche really well.
Anyone not one of those 4 would be a disaster in hindsight, right? But maybe he could have been okay. I see what both of you are saying.
Except for Jerry. You could probably replace Jerry. Better. Like if Jason Bateman was available.
This is one episode he really gets shit on for his acting too. Like if you go online, people think he's horrible here. I didn't notice it as much, but
it's the whining.
Shit on him.
The whining is like there's so much whining. Like even when he's dealing with him here. I love that Joel is like guilting him that he tells people to go see his show. It's such an underhanded, shitty thing to say.
Right. This is it. Jerry's doing the full breakup. Joel's in tears.
Yeah. Joel's manipulating here. Mm-hmm. My mom's good at this. Yeah.
I love too that they're talking about Iran. Were you either of you aware that Hezbollah was around in 1990?
No.
I was under the impression this was a newer terrorist.
Hezbollah. Yeah. They've been in there for a while. They've been fighting the fight for a while.
I haven't shut that shit down yet.
I don't think this stuff was on my radar yet. It was easier. Let me think of
how old were you guys here? How old were you guys here?
I was 9.
Yeah, I was 10. I was 10, yeah.
So it's like, in a way, it was easier to not know what was going on in the world, right? Because we didn't have instant access to everything. But also it was harder because I feel like adults wore it on their sleeves a little bit more sometimes. Like the news was just on. Like to your point earlier, Steve, we only had so many options, right? Like we watch the news every night, or in school. I don't know if they talk about the topics we talked about in school, right? Which more kind of sometimes current news or events going on. So, but the first major thing I really remember outside of like the space shuttle explosion was probably
we watched that live in school. Like,
right, exactly. Yeah. Beyond that, I would say it's like the Gulf War. But the Gulf War is where I really became like cognizant of like stuff going on.
I remember Iran-Contra being on when I got home from school every day, the hearings. I don't exactly remember what year that was, but I remember coming home from school every day, my mom ironing to go to work and watching the Iran-Contra hearings.
Contra was on my TV every day. Contra.
Yeah, up, down, down. Yeah, of course.
I had a planet to save.
Yeah.
I love that both George and Joel I think it's just a small thing, but I love that they both mess up that it's not this Wednesday, it's next Wednesday. For the he has to explain to both of them, and he's more annoyed. And I love George with his pennies here at the bank. Like he wants to go give in these pennies.
This is classic George, right? This is the George we know all the way through. This cheap guy here with the pennies.
Which is again, this is like the first time he's presented this way. Because before this, he seems like a successful like real estate agent, where he's even trying to get the more expensive apartment in the last one, because he can afford it. So all of a sudden now he's like penny pinching, literally. He's still rocking a sweater.
It's more that he expects someone else to roll these pennies. Does he?
Didn't even roll them.
Yeah, like what's the end game here? Is he going to come and just empty that jar onto their counter? Like.
There you go. Very sports centric. Like they're talking about Patrick Ewing and the Knicks, and like I feel like there's a lot more sports references here. Even later when George is like working for the friggin' Yankees, I feel like there's less sports references. Like that's more about working there. Like there's so many more off the cuff, like the sports talk early on here.
Right.
Yeah, I remember being so excited about the episode with the goddamn Yankees because it was about sports, right? It was about like interleague play, and George has got to deal with the Houston guys. Like I remember really being, and this was June of '90, so I wasn't quite 10 until September, but close enough.
Yeah, I mean, when did you start watching, Steve?
92, I think. Season 3.
Good, Aaron. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, it's fine. George is also very whiny here. I feel like Jerry, if you didn't watch the show, he's like, you would be shocked that he was a sports fan.
Yeah.
Like the way he moves and talks, and it's like, what? Like he doesn't come off that way at all. It's all disingenuous, but I think he probably actually is.
He's a diehard Mets fan, like diehard.
Yeah, he's a huge Mets fan. Yeah.
Yeah,
huge.
Like season
and
ticket.
He goes
in the booth. Some
he
games.
Goes to Mets fantasy camps. Goes to Mets fantasy camps. He was a longtime WFAN caller too. He would call as Jerry from Queens. He would call the overnight show on WFAN, like famously during this run and beforehand. So I don't know how much he's into the sports that aren't the Mets and baseball, but certainly he's a legitimate through and through diehard Mets guy for sure. Yeah.
I was about to make a crack about like, oh man, what a hopeless team to cheer for. But then I realized I'm talking to a Jets fan and a Sabres fan. So like, I get the pain. Jerry's an asshole here. Interrupting the counting. That's a shitty thing to do to a friend.
I like how he's going to buy him out though.
Yeah.
I can't believe George didn't take it. Yeah. I can't believe George didn't take it.
Well, in addition to being cheap, George is also very stubborn. So it's like he'd rather do the principle of having to sit there and bitch about doing it, but still do it. I mean, rolling coins sucks. Like I remember rolling coins, and I remember when Coinstar was created because I was working at Stop and Shop when it came out, and everyone thought it was like the greatest invention until they realized it was also taking like a percentage of the money, and then
like
people
9%.
complain. Like it's doing the work for you. What do you want? Like it's probably saving you 9% of what you're putting in there. I would say the time you're spending rolling the change, but yeah, and so this is a great
idea. Yeah,
this is a very early plant it in your head. Build your own place that you build your own pizza. I mean, that comes back like at least 3 seasons later, probably with Poppy,
right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's season 3 or 4, but it's a little while when he brings this thing back. So
you can't imagine that like I would imagine when they wrote this in, it was like, let's give him a crazy thing to say. Right. And then they realized later, oh, wait a minute. It's funnier when we make him do these crazy things.
I almost wonder if like a new writer on the show looked back at some old episodes to see if there was anything there that they could bring back. I don't know that it's fact or not. Just seems like one of those things. Maybe if you're new to the show in season 4 and you need something to impress the guys with, you go back and say, hey, remember this thing from season 1? I think we could do something with it now. Yeah.
One day you'll beg me to make
I don't like that. Both guys shit on the idea too, but like it's not the stupidest. It's not the stupidest.
That was a big thing,
so
not that long after this. I don't know if they were prescient or if it was already a thing, but I had multiple. Like I went to it, attended, and had my own multiple like pizza parties at Pizza Hut where you would make your own pizzas. Like that was a thing. That was a big kids party at the time that Pizza Hut offered, where you would go you'd play the little arcade games, then you'd go back to the kitchen, you'd design your own pizza. The birthday boy or girl would put the pizza in the oven, then they'd cook them and bring them out to you, and everyone ate their own little personal pizza that they made. Like that was like a big birthday party thing. Yep. Yeah. So it's funny that they're treating it like such a dumb idea when it was probably around this time. I think it's probably 90, 91, 92, like that. Those were big.
And I was reading online them trying to say that like Blaze Pizza and places like that are a take on this idea, just with the exception being that the worker actually puts it in the oven. But that basically you walking down the line and saying, put this, to take off on that. I think it's a stretch, but I think you're closer, Justin, than those people are.
So this is the first Elaine, then, is what you're saying. These are like the first, like this is the
that they recorded.
They recorded.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. I love that, like, they want to hang out but not speak.
Right. Yeah. The machine too. Like this show is always big about answering machines, and it was a big thing in that time. Yeah. Like I married parents. Like the first thing you do when we walk in the house, hit the answer machine. Who called? Yeah. And now it's like now you don't want to listen to a voicemail. If someone leaves me a voicemail, I'm fucking angry. I'm like, I want to throw my phone into.
Well, because I have to do something now.
Yeah.
Do you listen to them or read them? Your message.
I read them if I can. I read them. Oh yeah, if it pre-fills, I read them all day.
Yeah, I don't have that option.
Yeah,
you get it someday up there.
Yeah.
I read as much as I can. I do not want to listen. I just don't. I don't mind hearing Aaron's million voice messages that he sends me, but I think it's the ADHD in me that I can't, like, I have to sit there and listen, and I can't multitask because I'm doing it on my phone. And if I'm listening to a messenger audio thing on my phone, I can't leave that and like do other stuff. So I just have to sit there for like 2 minutes, literally staring into nothing, listening to this fucking message. And my brain doesn't operate that way.
I hate typing. Like
I don't really like it either. I don't like typing.
So do I.
And like if I can just speak into it and send it, like I just find it like and I always hit the wrong shit with my thumbs, and then I gotta correct. It's a whole fucking thing.
Plus they change every word. Yeah. Everything's auto-corrected now.
Oh, I had to take it off. I had to turn it off.
Yeah, it's brutal. So I'm one of the few people left that would actually rather call someone and talk to them, but nobody answers.
Well, see, I don't mind talking. I just don't want to listen to the message. Like if you call me to talk, as long as I'm free, I don't give a shit. To me, it's easier because I just have so many chats going and so many things going on that like this messaging is quicker a lot of times. But
anyway. Look, I mean, if you don't like the voice messages that I send, you can just tell me.
It's a me thing.
Just tell me, and I won't do them anymore.
My brain doesn't work in a way where I can just sit there blankly for 2 minutes. I get antsy. Anyway.
Did you guys think Elaine was hot? Then?
Yeah,
was she hot to you guys?
It's not like a 10,
but
she wasn't Kirstie Alley to me. Kirstie Alley was the hot sitcom measuring stick. You know what I mean? And she wasn't quite there. So,
and Theo Huxtable. Theo Huxtable was like,
oh yeah, Theo was good.
Yeah. It's tough because Elaine is in the. I have like a category of women that are almost like I feel. I don't want to even sexualize because they're so. I don't say elegant, but like on such a pedestal to me that
she killed a dog.
No, but not just Elaine. I mean, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Like to me, like she's such like on a pedestal that I don't even want to like sexualize her because like to me she's like so too perfect to even look at in that way. Like it's almost like it's like Elizabeth, right? It's Elizabeth. But like like it's almost like she's so like you feel bad thinking of her that way to me because it's like she's like this iconic woman that I don't know. Maybe it's just me being weird, but I look at her as just such a on a different level of anybody human, women or men.
But now that I look at it again, I'm sorry, Aaron, behind Joe's head there, that display is all the New York baseball teams, right? There's the Giants, the Dodgers, the Yankees.
Oh, okay, so it's the old.
If you look, it looks like he's got a display above a bookshelf of each hat of the teams. It's behind Joel's hat if they do that shot again. Sorry, Aaron. I mean,
no, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I see it now. It looks like he's got some historical stuff on that shelf, like old baseball stuff, which makes sense. He definitely seems like a memorabilia, old school collectible guy.
His books look like he robbed a library, though. It looks like they all have like the little Dewey Decimal tags on them,
and they look old. They look very old.
Like, no wonder Bookman's after him later.
Yeah, the perfect mark there.
You can't miss Air Jordan. So Joel definitely kind of putting the moves on Elaine, but this is it. so we're back to like the last episode. I thought actually had a little bit of a conclusion, but it feels like these early ones, they seem like they're dropping us into their world to experience a couple days of their lives that I think we're supposed to anticipate that this shit just goes on. Like it's not a story with a beginning and an end. We're just kind of coming in to visit like a day of what's going on. So like, I think we're supposed to assume, all right, Joel just annoys Jerry going forward, and the next day continues on. Like, there's no conclusion to this story. It's just like we experienced the day of Jerry's life dealing with this guy, and now like we're out.
Yeah, I think too. Like they're probably quite limited by the sets, right? Like and the locales, because like you can only like it's weird because we were talking about Cheers, where like 89, like 90% of it happens in that bar, but that bar is a hub, whereas this an apartment's a hub, so it's weird to get certain people there. Right. So maybe that's why you don't see them as much, or.
But it's gonna be a conclusion to the story, like
right.
Either break up or like, oh, you know, I'm all right, Joel, like, and go to the, like he's talking to Elaine about the game,
and Joel's gone now, right? I mean, did Joel ever come back?
No,
he's murdered. So. They murdered him, right?
They murdered him. Justin, what was the name of this episode?
Male Unbonding.
It's one of 2 episodes, not the something.
It's interesting.
There's another one, I think, in season 5 or something that isn't.
It's interesting. It's that late. I would have guessed like they were both early, and then once they got into the construct, they kept it. But
we'll I'll look up which one it was. I forget, but I'll look real quick while you're going over the news.
Yeah, I mean, it was just I think it was a fine episode.
I didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't like it when we watched it 8 years ago for the written product, and I didn't like it this time either.
Yeah,
I found that everyone was just so whiny. Right. Joel was whiny, George was whiny, Jerry was whiny, and then there wasn't enough Kramer and Elaine to kind of balance that out.
Yeah, I went Kramer at that time for best character. He didn't do a ton, but I thought he worked well when he was on, and I liked the
his
early
pizza idea.
Yeah, the pizza idea is like iconic. It's the most iconic thing probably to come out of this episode.
And Monks and Elaine, I guess.
Kramerica.
The other episode is season 6, episode 14, highlights of 100.
All right, so that's not even like a real episode. That was just like that's the 100th episode where they do like the flashbacks.
Right, a clip show essentially. Yeah.
So this is the only real episode that doesn't have the. So Aaron, you had Jerry back then as your best of this episode.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh.
He said he's at his best when he has an asshole streak in him.
Fuck. I hated him watching. It's Kramer.
I'm going Kramer.
Yeah. Like I found him. This time, like I was just cringing like crazy watching
when
him.
Kramer came on, I was kind of mesmerized by his rhythm and his cadences and his just goofiness. He drew me in right away. And I think when I was trying to fight myself to judge it based on the show having these 4 episodes and trying not to punish it for what it became, which is really difficult to do. But either way, I find Kramer just to pop off the screen as like engaging and, fun and just mesmerizing to watch. Just, beyond what he's saying, how he's saying it and how he's moving.
He still like almost looks like a creep too.
Yeah.
Like, which I kind of like
when he comes in with a hat on.
Yeah, it's funny. He's on Cheers. Like he comes in for 1 episode, and he's a creep in Cheers. And it's like all his other roles before this. Later, Kramer is like this level. He becomes the lovable doofus. But here, there's still that little element of danger, and I don't know how I feel about it, but I don't hate it.
It's the problem child stuff. I mean, I think that's still kind of lingering a little bit. Where he's just like a creepy asshole jail, prisoner or whatever, trying to prey on a kid. So it's like, that's like fresh in this. But they're still presenting him as a bit of a shut-in. Like, I don't think as much as the pilot where Jerry straight out says like, you haven't left the building in 20-something years or whatever.
He never leaves.
Right, but he hasn't, right? Have we seen him outside the apartment? I don't think we have yet. So be curious when he first shows up. Best story, I thought was the pizza stuff again. Like I didn't care as much for the Joel piece. Like it may be more relatable, but I thought the pizza idea, maybe it's because again with the hindsight, we know it's going to be something later. But I liked him. It was the first time we see Kramer spinning his schemes around. which is like a staple of the show for going forward. It's like he's always cooking up a scheme.
I like that one too. There's just not enough of it for me to say it.
Yeah.
So I think I still probably like the idea of breaking up with a friend, even though I didn't enjoy. I thought Kevin Dunn's performance was really good, but I don't like the character, and between him and Jerry, it wasn't unwatchable, but it doesn't feel like a great show.
I can kind of picture them in the room saying, "How about this?" Jerry's got a friend from growing up, and I love the idea of it. I think maybe the execution. I think just where they're at in terms of maybe Jerry's abilities as an actor, maybe their budget, maybe just the production in general. Maybe the idea is a little bit too ambitious for them to fully pull off. Maybe if this is season 6, we see them waiting outside at Madison Square Garden and Jerry blows them off and that's just the end of it or something. There's some kind of closure to it, like Justin said. But it seems like they're not at that level yet, and that's what kind of holds us back. I love the idea. I think the execution wasn't there, so I'll go with the pizza stuff. But the idea is great.
Like
it seems like it's good.
I was just going to say too, jumping on that, it's like I think one of the reasons why it doesn't land as well as it could with the friend stuff is that it almost feels watching it like Kevin Dunn is doing a different style of acting than everybody else. Like he's so big and out there.
I can buy that. Yeah.
And Jerry's not because he can't, and George is a real actor, so he's not. And those are the guys he interacts with. So it feels like he's doing this over-the-top caricature of an asshole, whereas at least so far, the show is pretty grounded in reality.
And it seems like they're both struggling to fill the time, but also they don't have enough time what they're trying to do. It's like a weird balance where they waste a lot of time on just the banality of conversation. Yeah, but I think that was their goal, right? It was like everyday conversation, but they spend so much freaking time on these conversations that kind of go nowhere. And then all of a sudden we're at the end of the episode and they have no time to conclude the episode. It's like it just ends. So that's why I think their goal was really just, here's a day in the life. You're going to drop in and out of these people. And there's going to be stories, but not really. It's just kind of they do it right later when they do the pilot and all that shit. And later in season 5, it's like, no, there's no story. There's no story. It's just, this is a thing. Right. So I think that was their,
that ends up making it a niche thing. Right. Because I mean, not everybody likes that kind of stuff. I love Black Mirror. I think Black Mirror is a brilliant show. But I get why people don't like it because it's just serialized, right? You jump into this story, then you're out, kind of thing, in and out. So there's no kind of through line. So I get it, but I get why there's a lot of people that just aren't on board for that.
The new show that's got a lot of buzz right now is Poker Face, which is kind of like that. They presented it initially in the pilot like it was going to be this serialized thing, and now it seems to have been this in and out story, almost like Justified was, where there is the through line that goes through it, but really every week is its own contained thing. It's story beyond the through line. It's almost like a hybrid of the two. But
well, I mean, that's kind of what Seinfeld becomes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, even though they're doing the pilot in that season, not every episode and not every moment focuses on that. So you got these little contained things, but with hints. It's this great tree that they build with all these branches.
Mm-hmm.
Ethical dilemma was pretty much, I think it's how do you break up with a friend?
With a friend, yep.
Relationship scale. I mean, we don't really have too much. We got Jerry and Elaine a little bit, and then you kind of got, Joel and Elaine. At the end, he's trying to pick up on her, but not a lot of.
One thing about Jerry and Elaine, though, and maybe I'm reading too into it, but I feel like the conversation they're having about what do you want to do is the dilemma of, okay, we used to have sex now.
Right.
We don't have sex anymore. So what are we going to do instead?
What are we doing instead of sex?
Yeah.
Right. What are we going to do otherwise? So I think
not talking.
They didn't go into saying it much. Yeah, let's not talk to each other. Because maybe that's what ended the relationship to begin with. But I think they were implying that without saying it, or maybe I'm reading too much into it. But that's what I took from that.
No, that's good.
Normally at that moment, they'd go to the bedroom.
Right.
They're not doing that anymore. So what now?
The other thing too, I mentioned when I was mentioning about the time, is the stand up too is still obviously eating up a lot of time. You talked about that was 90 seconds, whereas in the future it might be 15 seconds, and then so that's all. When you have a 22-minute show like that, that 1 minute can be a whole scene.
Well, they get better at not wasting that dialogue. In a future episode, you won't get the dialogue about George and the girl.
Right. Because it made no sense. It had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, it had no bearing on the rest of the episode, right? And that's something they become excellent at later, where every single word means something. Yeah. They're just not there yet, and I don't want to hold it against them, but that is the difference between early Seinfeld and later Seinfeld.
Key debuts, we had Joel. Just kind of iconic moments. We had Kramer saying Kramerica Industries, the first pizza place mentioned. Jerry's the first to use "It's not you, it's me," which kind of becomes a catchphrase throughout the show. I never made a man cry. Kicked him in the groin once. He didn't cry. I got the cab. That was Elaine's quote. Oddities and fun facts. We saw all of Jerry's hallway. And then his final grade. I mean, back then I went 4 out of 10. Probably around there, 3 or 4 out of 10 for me. Like, there's some funny bits in there. Watching it this way, as we know, you miss some stuff, obviously, when you're, so I think we're going to miss some of the quick one-liners as we live watch. But
what was my grade on it?
You are 4 as well.
I'd probably be closer to like a 2 now.
Well, it seems like you were into the Jerry and Joel stuff.
Not on this watch.
Yeah.
It's hard because am I grading it relative to all 100 episodes of Seinfeld or whatever?
I know.
Or just on the first 4? You know what I mean? Because it's just as good as those. And I wouldn't say it's a 2, cancel the show, get the fuck out. I think it's a 2 because we know how good the show is. So it depends. It depends. For me, I think your original grades is kind of more how I feel, like a 4.5 in that range, kind of a show. I think Aaron, I think you're guilty of something I am all the time too. Like, you're punishing it for what it became, and maybe that's the assignment here. Maybe we are grading them all relative to each other.
Yeah,
like on the 24-inch podcast, we grade the Hulk matches based on Hulk's matches, all of them.
Right.
So. And if we're doing that, and this is relative to all Seinfeld, it's in the 2 range.
Yeah, I think
compared to all the episodes, but it depends which way you guys want to go with it. Your show.
I think you need a point of comparison, right? Like, in order to even come to a number. And Seinfeld's not really like anything else, Like, if you it's hard to compare Seinfeld and Cheers, or Seinfeld and the Cosby Show, or Seinfeld and Family Ties. They're very different beasts, right? And so for me, it kind of only makes sense to compare it to itself, right? Like
okay, so you can do that 2 ways too. You can compare it to itself 1 to 4, or you compare it to itself 1 to 120 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So there's 2 options there too. What I mean?
It's just weird because like it whenever I'm doing this, and I'm like this with wrestling matches too, it's like I don't want to give it, say, like a 5 or a 6. Not that we're ranking these things, but I don't want to give it a 5 or a 6. And then later,
you want to give that room.
Yeah. Later, a 5 and a 6 is like a much better show, right? It's just in comparison to the ones around it. So I'm always trying. That was one of the things I was always doing with Rumble when we were doing the Rumble podcast. And I was comparing guys. I was like, well, no, I can't go here because this guy's here. So it needs to be at least here, but there's no perfect system, obviously.
All right. Well, it was another fun trip down Seinfeld memory lane. We'll be back soon with our next episode. It should be episode 5, and that'll actually close out season 1. So we'll kind of see what that leap to season 2 looks like once we finish up season 1. Steve, thanks for joining us. Of course, we'll have you back on this adventure. You can check you out. You can see it there on the screen at Sportscasters on Twitter. Sportscasters podcast drops regularly, and get all the info there, as well as 24-inch podcast. Adam's Division, maybe someday coming back. We'll see.
Yeah. It's up to Peter, Mr. I Hate Doing Podcasts now.
When they bring the Adams Division back.
Yeah.
As far as Aaron and I, you can find us all over the place on YouTube, here on the North South Connection Podcast Network channel, as well as on any podcast.
Can I plug something?
Go for it.
I want to plug something. I want to plug Aaron's breakdown of Hulk and Andre from WrestleMania 3 on this channel, because it's awesome. And I'm very critical of people talking about stuff I love as much as Hulk and Andre from WrestleMania 3, or anything from WrestleMania 3, and that killed. So if you're watching this, just go down a couple videos and absolutely watch that, because Aaron destroyed it.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, it's a quick watch too. I think it's under
20 minutes, and it feels like 5. It feels like 5 minutes.
Yeah, we have a lot of longer and shorter content here, and you can find all of our stuff at northsouthconnection.com at our website. Follow us on social media. Till then, we're out. We'll talk to you soon.